Hello, everyone, and welcome to the Lost Bots. My name is Jeffrey Gardner, and I'm joined by my illustrious co-host, Stephen Davis. And we're going to talk about finding unknowns and, quote, adjusting your filters, unquote, similar to these avatars. So as much as we try to tune and filter, they aren't spot on, but they're close. Hence why we're the avatars in this episode. And Stephen looks like a Funko Pop Joey Tribbiani.
Ha! All right. Well, thank you. Thank you. I love me some Joey Tribbiani. And that explains the avatars. But why did you just quote adjusting your filters? It seems like you had a pretty good explanation and it made sense to me.
With my non-fingers, well, let me ask you a question. Do you like balloons?
Oh, well, yeah. Who doesn't like balloons? When you blow them up and you squeeze the top and let the air out and it makes that giant like.
Well, I'm glad you do, because this episode was inspired by balloons. Not the kind you find at a birthday party or with creepy clowns or the ones that you might twist into animals on your side gig or your main gig, depending on how you look at it, bazinga. But the kind that everyone was kind of recently talking about over the last month, spy balloons, and adjusting filters was part of that whole thing. So that's why I virtually air quoted it.
Spy balloons. Oh, geez. Politics, eh?
There
we go.
No. Much like religion, politics is a topic I'm not going to touch with a 60,000-foot pole. Get it? Like the height of the spy.
The height of the spy balloon. Yeah. I got it.
The facts thrown in there, but I'm moving along in the sake of time. So for those of you who may not have followed the news or don't want to watch the news, which is a perfectly valid option these days, about a month or so ago, a spy balloon crossed through Canada and across the United States. Everyone was up in arms and got into a tizzy about why didn't we see this sooner? Have there been any others? Blah, 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 blah. And it got me thinking, we do something similar in security. Hence, this episode is dedicated to finding unknowns and, again, quote, adjusting your filters, which is basically the same language our military used in response to the incident.
All right. So you mentioned how you go about finding unknowns. That's like a, quote from a movie of one of my personal favorites, where it's like, it's an island that you can only get to if you know where it is. So how the heck do you begin finding things that you don't know about?
I think that is Tortuga.
The Isla de Muerta, actually.
Okay, well then that was the town Tortuga? I don't know.
Yeah, Tortuga was the pirate town where I think one of my ancestors came from.
Oh, sweet. I'm related to people who tilled the soil, so I don't have any really cool stories from my ancestors. But
I just made that up. I really don't know if they are or not.
Now I'm disappointed, and I don't respect you as much. But
getting you back respected me?
Debatable. Oh. Getting back to balloons and finding the unknowns. As the adage goes, if you can't measure something, it doesn't exist. So first steps is we have to understand our ability to see and our ability to detect, and also the quality of the events and alerts we're going to receive. So there are a couple good metrics for those, and we'll start with data coverage and data quality. All these are kind of equations or math, so it'll give you percentages or numbers of some kind. So data coverage, you have to understand the monitored assets in your environment. So this is kind of where like also having a vulnerability management program or the ability to scan for these things will definitely help you in your DNR world. I love how your little bobblehead was nodding up and down. That was awesome. But monitored assets is basically the number of known devices feeding into your SIEM or XDR solution. You also have to know unmonitored assets, or basically the number of known devices not feeding into your SIEM or XDR solution. So whether they can't export logs or can't store data, just things that the organization knows about that you're not actually getting data from. Then you need to know shadow IT. And again, these are all things which you should kind of know anyways, but they'll just help you with the data coverage metrics. Shadow IT is the assets or resources that someone somewhere in the organization is aware of that don't send any data to your SIEM or XDR solution. Basically, unapproved assets being used by employees to do work. And then there's the rogue assets. Every time you make a thing, your little eyebrows go up. It's going to make me laugh. The number of illicit assets not known to anyone and not sending data to your SIEM. So basically what you do is the metric is your monitored assets divided by everything we've just talked about added up together. So monitored, unmonitored, shadow IT, and rogue. You divide your number of monitored assets by that, and you basically come up with a metric that you can track over time. So as the monitored increases and your metrics approach 1 or parity, that's good. But if your denominator, big words today, increases, or your data coverage approaches 0, that's definitely bad. And so that basically gives you an idea of the ability to observe your environment. Like, what are you actually able to see? Data quality is different. That measures your ability to detect malicious activity occurring within that data. So a good place to start with that, and I say start, is MITRE ATT&CK coverage. So how many of the TTPs across, MITRE's 250 plus are you able to detect? That's a good starting point. You always want to make it more tailored and specific. So pen testing is okay if it's continuous. I tend to go with red team and purple team exercises, because those generally give you a measure of how your security team is actually performing. And it's not just measuring technology. Events and alerts, though, that's where it gets a little fun. So for events specifically, events per data source, basically, helps you evaluate low value data sources. So combining that with some of the other metrics we'll talk about, like if you're getting 100,000 events per data source, are those events actually relevant? And this is where some of the other metrics will come into play. So you got events per data source, alerts per data source. This helps determine the noisiest data sources. The really fun ones are the time claimed per alert, meaning like every alert you have to triage, basically determining whether an alert is a false positive or true positive, and then escalation, de-escalation. A high value there indicates a low quality alert that's going to require a significant amount of time to invest or triage effectively. And then the last metric, I know I'm going metrics crazy, so you might have to rewatch this episode more than once. The ratio of true to false positives per data source. Would you just laugh for no reason?
Well, no, because you were like, you might have to watch this episode more than one time. And I was like, I'm going to watch this episode multiple times because my avatar just is on point.
I feel like we look more like Team America World Police than actual avatars, but just the way it moves. Anyway, ratio of true to false positives per data source. Basically, so you take the number of true positives divided by the number of false positives over a given period. So let's say for a data source, you had 5 true positives in a month and 100 false positives. 5 divided by 100 is 0.05, mental math for the win, or a 5% true positive rate. That would definitely be a data source I would seriously consider investigating further to perhaps tune at the data source level. So for example, if it's an antivirus solution, maybe adjusting, your filters there, or filtering prior to logging. So using an intermediary solution to kind of filter out those logs, drop some of the events that may not be necessary. That can help you, reduce the ratio.
All right, that makes sense. And just it might just be me, but even though these are all great metrics, they feel more like reactive and not so much, like proactive. So what about looking beyond our borders and seeing things coming like directly at us, like prior to wow, I can't even really talk today. Yeah, seeing something coming at us before it starts hitting the org.
I gotcha. So I mean, we did an episode on this a long time ago, but it is something that's very relevant to this discussion. So having something like targeted external threat intelligence is tailor-made for this kind of scenario. The basis of its existence, just in one man's opinion, is to identify those threats coming your way and allowing you to take preventative measures where you can, and potentially increase your monitoring ability for the targeted resources. Traditional threat hunting is still pretty incredibly valuable. Traditional threat intelligence is still incredibly valuable, especially for threat hunting. But what that externally focused intelligence allows you to do is move beyond reacting and start getting proactive, which should have the downstream effect of reducing the number of alerts and false positives that either you and your team have to sort through. If you're using a managed service provider, it can also definitely give them some additional intel to feed back into you. But a lot of the stuff we're talking about, adjusting filters, this should, if you're using a managed service provider, it's something they should be working with you on and they should be taking care of on the back end.
Yeah, okay, I agree on that. And it's super important to be adjusting your filters, right?
Well,
I mean,
it's the
your air
only-
filter should be replaced every 30 days.
Your water filter in your refrigerator, definitely.
Right, when it dings at you and it's mad, and every time at 2 a.m. you go get a glass of water, it's like ding, ding.
Yep. And don't just hit that button 6 or 7 times to make it reset to green. That will eventually bite you.
Yes, but you can also go off the taste of the water. So I will do that because my refrigerator has that like filter coming to end of life and then replace filter. But I remember, remember when certain printers came out and it was like found out that, they were forcing you to replace the ink cartridges when they were only 80% depleted. So yeah, I do hit that button to reset my filter.
Dude, I love
Oh, dude.
I was saying my avatar was stuck, so I think I kind of like the cat. I'll stick with this. I like how looked like I was frozen in fear the entire time you were talking. Just it matches my mental state.
I have that effect on people.
In real life too.
Yeah, exactly.
Not just virtually. So I mean, essentially, adjusting your filters and being able to find those balloons, man, I wish I was in the tropics, essentially boils down to exactly kind of what we talked about today. You have to understand your environment and understand what you're able to see, what your coverage is, the quality of the data that you're getting. Because again, like with spy balloons, if you don't have the adequate, if you're not monitoring the right airspace, if you're not able to see everything in your airspace, you're not able to make that determination of whether or not something is or is not a threat, no matter how good your filter. Essentially, okay, I can see them in my own airspace, I can see them in my own environment, essentially. But what about being able to move beyond my borders and get out of that reactive cycle? Again, there's no better substitute for targeted external threat intelligence. It's made for this scenario. So unless you have anything to add to this, Steve, beyond tilting your head and raising your eyebrows, which is, I don't know if you're doing that on purpose, but it's friggin' hilarious. I'm going to close out this episode. So do you have anything else to add, or we're ready to let these people stop looking at our avatar?
Yeah, I think we're good to go, man. You definitely had some great talking points there and food for thought and stuff like that. So no, this has been great. I don't have anything to add because you've pretty much said it already and you're smarter than me. So
depending on the hour of the day, dude.
So, my avatar is cooler though.
Your avatar definitely, it has hair, which is always a bonus. But thank you all for joining us and our Team America inspired avatars for this episode. And I can't wait for you to join us for our next episode. Hope you all have a great rest of your day, and thank you for joining us today.
Have a good one all.
Take it easy, guys.